You guys hungry or something? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Inshallah, alhamdulillah. I know, alhamdulillah. SubhanAllah, Ramadan is going by very, very fast, as you guys can see. Everyone I talk to, and I ask the question, how is Ramadan going? Most people say, SubhanAllah, it's going by so fast. For those of us with some gray hair and we've been around for a while, we can tell the difference from many years ago to now, how the time is moving rapidly. But SubhanAllah, anytime I experience it and I feel that, wallahi, my iman increases. Because it just reminds me of our beautiful Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his statement where he said, لا تقوم الساعة حتى يتقارب الزمان. That the hour will not be established until one of the signs would be that time would be moving very rapidly. Right? And he goes on in the hadith to describe that a year would start to feel like a month. And a month would feel like a week would feel like a day would feel like an hour, and then he said an hour would feel like the flicker of a flame. And, when you experience that, like we're experiencing it today, for many of us, those of us who are young, maybe, it's the same. We can't really tell the difference between how time was before and time now, but for those of us who experience it, subhanAllah, it is one of the prophecies of our beautiful Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam over 1400 years ago. We are experiencing it today. And then, subhanAllah, there's also, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that when you start to feel, when the time is moving rapidly, that this is, one of the signs of the qiyamah, of the hour, it's like, okay, when we feel that today, remind yourself of the sa'ah. Remind yourself that our meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is near, inshaAllah, and the fact that we are going to go back to Allah and be examined, it's a good reminder for us when we take these experiences of life and connect them to the bigger goal of life, which is meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a pleasant and beautiful state. And, that's a good segue into what I was going to talk about today, having a sound Islam, when we meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, more so at a deeper level, a sound heart, right? يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفُعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Shu'ara, that the day when we meet Him is a day where there will be no benefit from wealth or progeny, except for the one who meets Allah with a sound heart. Because the one who meets Allah with a sound heart, will his wealth and his progeny benefit him or her? Yes or no? No? Why not? What about the sadaqah he spent? What about the wealth he spent for a good cause? What about the children that made dua for him? What about the knowledge he passed to his children that they're now sharing? So those things will benefit. So these two ayat are telling you that the prerequisite to getting any benefit from anything is the sound heart. You see what I'm saying? So may Allah help us to meet Him with a sound heart and a beautiful Islam. And today's hadith is from the 40 hadith of An-Nawawi, which we're going through each week. How many of you came last week? Raise your hand. MashaAllah. How many of you have been to any one of them? Any one of the two thus far? Okay, alhamdulillah. Tamam. So you know kind of the series and what we're doing. For those who haven't been, each Saturday, he kind of talked about it, we're going through these 4 hadith that are, Ibn Dawood, the muhaddith, he described them to be, they will enable you to practice and understand your religion with completeness. Okay? And of course, we began the first Saturday with intentions. The second Saturday was about loving for your brother what you love for yourself. Today is about the following, where it's narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Min husni Islam al-mar'i tarkuhu ma la ya'ni." Okay, which means that from the soundness or the completion of one's Islam is that they leave or they abandon or they turn away from that which does not concern them. That which does not concern them. Okay. So, subhanAllah, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that I have been given the skill of comprehensive and concise speech. Right? Jawami al-kalim. This is like the comprehensive. He can say a lot with few words. And this is one of those examples where very few words, but has a lot of depth and a lot of meaning and a lot of lessons for us. So he tells us, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that part of completing or making your Islam sound, okay, is one of these characteristics, is this characteristic of leaving that which doesn't concern you. Now, to really benefit from this hadith, I want us to first recognize the connection that Rasulullah ﷺ is making in this hadith. Okay, it's a very, powerful and important connection. Because he's saying this action of staying away from things that don't concern you, not busying yourself with things that don't concern you, is related to the completeness of your Islam. The most valuable thing you have as a human being, your deen. Right? So what is this connection that the Prophet ﷺ is making? Several things. One, there's a hadith that supports this hadith, where the Prophet ﷺ, he said, أَكْمَلُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ إِيمَانًا أَحْسَنُهُمْ خُلُقًا, which means that the believers with the most complete, with the most complete iman, right, is the one with the best character, are those with the best character. You find in many ahadith, خَيْرُكُمْ خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِ, the best of you, best in what? In Islam, are those who are best to their family. Many hadith you find the Prophet ﷺ connecting your faith, your La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, the soundness of that, the grade of that, to your character in dealing with others. Right? Which is, subhanAllah, I think a point that sometimes is sadly missed. That this Salatul Dhuhr we prayed, this fasting we're doing, this Ramadan, all of this ibadah, the reading of Quran, all of it's supposed to translate and to equate to something, which is that you are a beautiful human being in dealing with other people. Really. And if that is not showing, if that's not amongst the fruits of your worship of Allah, then something's wrong with your worship of Allah. Right? And this is very important. بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ حُسْنَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. As the Prophet said, I have been, one of the mission, I've been sent to perfect beautiful character, or to teach us beautiful character. The Prophet ﷺ was sent to create beautiful human beings, to help Bani Adam become beautiful human beings. This is Rasulullah ﷺ. And this is one of the reasons why وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ, that you haven't been sent except as a rahmah, a mercy to al-alamin, the worlds. Because everything that will come from him, that would emanate from Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, would create beauty in the world. Beauty in the world. And wallahi, the world is in need of more beauty, more nur, more beautiful human beings. May Allah help us to be amongst them. So the Prophet ﷺ is telling us in this hadith that one of the things that will enable you to have good akhlaq, that will help to beautify your akhlaq, your character, is that you stay away from things that don't concern you. And we're going to get into a little bit more on what that means. But this is one of the first steps to being a good person, is that you're not someone who's delving into people's business. And this hadith, if you want the simple translation of it, it's from the beauty or the soundness of someone's Islam is that they mind their own business. That's what it means, seriously. It's a good way, mind your own business. But there's a lot to that. Now, the other aspect of this hadith that you can see is connected to the soundness of our deen of Islam is that when you leave affairs, you release your mind from worrying about this and that, then you are actually leaving more capacity to worry about those things that are important and priority for you. Okay? So to have a beautiful Islam, you need to be concerned about what are those things that may destroy or affect your Islam. And you don't have the mental time to think about that if you're busying yourself with other things that don't concern you. So giving yourself more opportunity to focus on what's important. Okay, another aspect of this connection between our Islam and this practice of leaving that which doesn't concern us. And then the third thing is the overcoming of desires. And I'm going to get into that a little bit, inshallah. But let's first talk about, inshallah, what does it mean? What is it mean when he says to leave that which doesn't concern you? What is considered that which doesn't concern you, that we should be leaving? Okay? The scholars talk about the definition of this is three things, three areas. One being that which concerns you. Let's define what that is. What is that concerns you? That which has a connection of importance to you, number one. Has a connection of importance to you. Okay? So, there could be family. It could be anything that has a connection of importance to you. And not just a connection to you, connection of importance. Because there are many things that are connected to us that are not important. So connection of importance to you, number one. Number two, that which will benefit your dunya. With that dunya being a means of also benefiting your akhirah. And we have to tack that onto that. Okay? Because the scholars talk about, yes, you want to make this kind of islah, this rectification of your dunya, your situations of life, but those also all of that rectification should lead to some benefit when you go and meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? And then that which, so we'll couple this one, this is the second one, that which benefits your dunya and akhirah. Okay? Dunya and akhirah. And then the third one is that which harms your dunya and your akhirah. Okay? So these are the things that are concerning to us, that we should be cared about in life. We should care about in life. Okay? And I want to make the caveat here because sometimes there's maybe a shallow understanding of what is it that benefits our akhirah. Okay? And sometimes the understanding is just praying, dhikr, ibadah, that's it. Right? Those are the only things that benefit your akhirah. But actually, leisure, rest, having some fun every now and then, are means of benefiting akhirah. Right or wrong? You know, what they call burnout, right? It is part of Islam. The Prophet ﷺ taught us to be very balanced. You remember the three men that came and he told them that, they tried to make this commitment, I'll fast all the time, I'll pray qiyam all night, I won't pray, I won't get married. He came and boom, he established the balance. He's like, look, I fear Allah, I know Allah more than you. Right? But I have balance. I pray, I sleep, I marry, I fast, and there are days I don't fast. Because as a Muslim, we should be mindful of not pursuing extremes. Anyone who pursues extremes will be overcome. We'll be overcome by this deen. So we have to be very balanced in our approach. And therefore, to be balanced, practice the sunnah of balance in life means that you have fun every now and then. Right? He used to joke. He used to do leisure activities. Right? So, this idea that only the, traditional ibadah is that which benefits our akhirah. No. Think about what is going to help you to do better quality traditional ibadah. And one of the things that helps you is taking a break and having this balance in your life. That's right. So I wanted to caveat that. Now, the scholars actually go to another level about, to be specific, the 4 categories of things that we should be leaving. Because the hadith said you're leaving something, right? So what are the 4 things to leave? They mention the muharramat, the things that are haram. Okay? They mention the things that are makruhat. They mention the things that are mushtabihat, which are the things that are not clear, right? Those confusing matters. Allah talks about them in the Quran. Those confusing matters that have not been clarified by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So sometimes people get stuck in those things, and there's no direct clarification from the 2 authentic sources, and they end up just, assuming this, and that, and sometimes it overcomes them, right? With confusion and doubts, and the doubts start to arise. So leaving those things that have not been clarified by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and going with that which is clear. Right? The gray areas, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam talked about. The area which is between the halal and haram, which is not clear. Okay? So that's one of the things we should leave, as part of leaving that which doesn't concern us. And then they said, which is the part we're going to talk about a little bit more, is the mubahat, the things that are permissible, are like, no problem. You can do them. But they're excessive. Fudul. Like, you are the excessive engaging with the things that are permissible. Okay? And the way they define excessive is you go beyond your need of it. So you're playing some games, right? You want some relaxation of your mind, right? You play until you feel like, okay, I've had some, actually game is not a good example because it goes into addiction and different things, but, say it's food, sweets, for example, some type of leisure, some fun activity that you're doing. All right, go to the point that, okay, yeah, you've relaxed, you've released some stress, but at the end of the day, also get back to what's important. Don't let that become what's important, the priority, right? I think a good way to kind of establish that in your lifestyle is to make your priority list in your mind and never let those leisure things overcome those priorities. As long as you don't do that, then inshallah you can remain balanced in your leisure and entertainment time, if that makes sense. And then, of course, with speech, right? Sometimes speaking more than we need to speak, giving an opinion for every single thing that we don't need to give an opinion for, going beyond. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But those are the kind of the four categories. Now, let's get a little bit into that. Now, when it comes to the things that are haram, that we're supposed to leave, related to that which doesn't concern us, that usually gets us into the area of gossiping, backbiting, talking about people, talking about other people's business. Okay? And, Hassan al-Basri, rahimahullah, he said that, one of the signs, may Allah protect us from this, that one of the signs that Allah has let a servant to himself, right, left a servant to himself, is that person becomes completely, like all they're focused on is on other people's business, is on that which doesn't concern them. Like that is their life, day in and day out. Gossip, gossip, gossip. Talking about her, him, that's it. Okay. And, specifically when it comes to gossip and backbiting, we know these are amongst the things that are not permissible, except for a few exceptions. But there's like this, an internal maybe inclination or pleasure, I should say, that comes from gossiping. Okay, and actually there was a study that was done on this, right, in the area of psychology, in which they studied the brains of people during the times of gossip and these things. They found that when people hear like scandals and negative things about other people, that it did something, a sense of like calmness internally, mentally. A sense of sweetness came to these people. SubhanAllah, like they enjoyed to hear the negativity, the scandal, the downfall of other people. Right? And I think it's pretty clear, because what happens in that situation is, cancel culture, for example. They did some studies around this, and they said that with cancel culture, a lot of times people are going out there and trying to cancel people because they're trying to make themselves feel better, trying to boost their ego, trying to boost their self-esteem. Because what happens is when you're talking about the scandal of someone else, that perhaps you didn't engage in that, it starts to make you feel like, okay, I'm a little bit more holy, I'm more pure, I'm okay, I'm in a good place. Even though you may have so many flaws, right? Just because you're talking about someone whose flaw is maybe a little bit more severe than yours, it makes you feel better about your flaws, right? About your weaknesses. Right? And this is a reality. Like psychologically, this is a reality of the human being. Right? That we like to feel good about ourselves. We like to be viewed in a positive light. And when you find everybody viewing that person in a negative light, then you feel like you're protected from that negative light and you're in the positive light. You see? So there's this inclination within us that sometimes will be like, there's a little bit of sweetness in talking bad about someone. So and that's why the Prophet ﷺ, when he told us that whoever can guarantee me, who can protect what's between their jaws and protect their chastity, will have Jannah. Protecting the tongue, right, is a type of jihad, a type of struggle, a type of fight that you have to constantly be engaged in, to hold yourself back from saying what you shouldn't say. Because sometimes your nafs will want you to say things about other people, because there's something that comes with it. And subhanallah, social media doesn't help. Social media today doesn't help, and this hadith really is For us, it's very relevant to our status and the way we operate with social media. Much of social media is like, subhanAllah, like designed for us to engage in talking about others and focusing on others. Right? And, subhanAllah, the one thing I want to mention actually about like this idea of talking negative about someone else as a means to make yourself feel better. One of the scholars, his name, Ibrahim al-Nakhai, rahimahullah. He said something. He said, verily, he said, I will see something I dislike in someone, and nothing stops me from speaking about it except a fear of me being put to the trial in the same way. In Surah Yusuf, when the women of the city, of the Medina, they heard about what the wife of Al-Aziz was trying to do with Yusuf, okay? And they heard what she was, they started to like criticize her, inna lanaraha fi dhalalin mubin, that we see her, she's misguided, she's trying to seduce her servant, etc. Subhanallah. What happened to them when they were invited by the wife of Aziz and they finally saw Yusuf? What happened to them? Raise your hand. Huh? They cut themselves. Subhanallah. They got caught in their own weakness. The weakness they were blaming, the criticism they had when they were put in the position, and that was the plan of wife al-Aziz. When they were put in the position, they themselves got, they got caught in that same type of desire. That same desire. And subhanAllah, every time I read that, it reminds you that, be careful. Be careful. Don't think that you're Superman. Don't think that you are immune to what that person is being challenged with and being tested with. Right? And therefore, sometimes your excessive kalam on that, your excessive criticism, your excessive blaming, could be a means of that coming to you and you yourself being exposed in the same way. So one of the things to help restrain ourselves, our tongue, and this kind of talk is to remind ourselves that, hey, I have weaknesses. I don't know if I was put in that position that they were put in, that I would be strong or not strong. I don't know. I leave the judgment to Allah. And I focus on myself. Very important in dealing with people and the flaws of people. Right? And also to remind yourself of your flaws. And those sins that you've done, those things that you've committed, that Allah covered for you maybe. Maybe Allah covered for you. And be grateful, alhamdulillah, for that. Right? So, subhanAllah, the speaking and the gossiping about others is very, very, very detrimental. And it becomes detrimental to the health of the ummah. And I want all of us to recognize that when it comes to our relationships with one another. So for example, I'm going to give you an example actually. Because I just spoke about this in my khutbah the other day. Laylatul Qadr. The Prophet ﷺ was about to come out to the people and tell them the details of Laylatul Qadr. Tell them when it is and everything you need to know about it. Right? And it's mentioned that when he came out, he found two Muslims doing what? Fighting and insulting one another. And he said, based on that, rufi'at, that the knowledge was lifted of what he was about to give. The knowledge of what? Of the specific details of Laylatul Qadr. And we were left with, that it's in one of the odd nights. Right? In one of the odd nights. Now, that hadith is, subhanAllah, you think about why the Prophet ﷺ is even informing us of this. To inform us of this danger, and to be mindful of this danger of the fighting with one another. As the ummah of Rasulullah ﷺ. We can disagree, we can debate, but the fighting that makes our hearts separate, right, is something that has, to be honest, it's something that has been one of the asbab, one of the things that has led to Philistine today. It's a reality. Like it or not. We've been pointing the finger a lot on the oppressor. Yes, for sure. But how often have we pointed the finger at the ummah? And where did we go wrong? There's nothing that can compete with the haqq. There's nothing that can compete with the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if they are following Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the way they should. And if the ummah as a whole was following this guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we would be much stronger than you see. We would be much more influential than what you see. Right? We look at history when the Muslims were really running the world. Because there was a point we were adhering to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought. Umar radiallahu anhu, he said it best. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He honored us through Islam. And if we chase honor through anything other than Islam, He'll debase us. We'll become debased. We chase honor through money, through power, through popularity. So Islam is where it's at. If we can be and understand that even here, Adam Center, Virginia, your relationship with him, your relationship with him, your relationship with her, all of these relationships, right, create the bigger picture, the bigger strength. Innal mu'mina kal-mu'min, innal mu'mina lil-mu'mini kal-bunyan. That the believer to the believer, they're like a structure. Yashuddu ba'duhu ba'da. That they strengthen one another. And when you think of the brick structure that the Prophet ﷺ is kind of alluding to here, start taking bricks. I know these are not bricks. Actually, yeah, they're tiles for those of you in construction. But imagine those bricks, right? You start taking bricks from different spots. The entire structure becomes weak. And the strength of each brick affects the strength of the entire structure. Right? The connection, the glue, however you cement each brick, that connection affects the strength of the entire structure. See? So our connections are very valuable, very important for the greater good of the ummah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to implement. So, now one of the things that comes from the constantly engaging in that which doesn't concern us, and I want to go a little bit more into social media because this is, I think very relevant to us, is you have this idea of comparison, right? When your eyes are constantly, right, indulging in the lives of people, right, indulging in lives, what's going to happen? It's just natural. It's going to happen. Is that you're going to have moments where you start comparing yourself to what you're seeing. Do you guys remember when Facebook was being, accused of all the harm of their social media apps and everything? And you remember Instagram was considered to be the, actually no. So what happened was Facebook was being accused, and then Facebook, they actually said, you know what, let's go and do our own research on our own apps. So they did their own research on their own apps. And they found that Instagram is the leading cause of depression, anxiety in teenage women, teenage girls. But they didn't release it. They hid the study. They hid the results of the studies. And then it was eventually leaked. But they themselves, Meta themselves, they knew exactly what harm Instagram was causing. And it was specifically a harm that was really targeting teenage girls. And the main reason for that is that app specifically, because you would wonder, like, why not? There's so many other apps out there. Instagram specifically is really like all about showcasing the brightest of moments. Right? That's really the point of Instagram, right? The instant image of that bright moment, that wonderful moment, that happy moment. And what happens is people, just imagine you get on that and you're on it for like an hour, and all you're seeing is like people's amazing moments. And then you put the phone down, and your parents are yelling at you in the back, or your sisters, you have financial difficulties. You go in the mirror and you see you got like some pimples and stuff. You feel like I just saw this beauty, and then I look at myself, I look at my situation, right? It can lead to some really negative feelings inside, right? And subhanAllah, the Prophet ﷺ, he gave us the medicine for this. He said the only time that comparison is beneficial is when? Can anybody guess? Huh? What? What's that? Faith with someone else's? Maybe, yeah. Someone who has better faith and you want to strive to be like them, yeah. There's something specific he mentioned, yes. Sister? Comparing what? Okay. Anyone else on this side? He said that there's something that you can do to help you to appreciate what you have more, and it's by, exactly, ahsanti. That if you're going to compare, look at people who are having a more difficult time than you. Right? That's why, nowadays we give sadaqah, we do it on these online the online institutions, and they go do the on-the-ground work. There's a great benefit in going to the homeless shelter, in going in the inner city, in going in the village, and giving the food yourself, giving the money yourself. Because you see with your own eyes someone who's in a situation that's worse off than you, worse off from a material perspective. They may be in a better spiritual situation. You never know. They may be much higher with Allah than us. But materially, from a comfort perspective and a worldly perspective, they're having difficulty. Right? And that's why one of the things the Prophet ﷺ said, if you want to soften your heart, he said, feed the poor, wamsah ra's yatim, and pat the head of the orphan. Right? Feed the poor, and in that time there's no Islamic relief. You go donate online. Feeding the poor means you're going and you're engaging with the poor person. And to pat the head of the orphan, that's even more like direct contact with someone who's having a difficult situation. You go to that orphan, you see them without family, and you pat. That softens the heart. Right? This is what the Prophet ﷺ guided us to. So, looking at people, Abdullah ibn Mubarak, rahimahullah, one of the scholars, one time he was with one of his students, and they were walking, they passed by a huge, beautiful palace home. And he noticed one of his students was admiring it. He just turned his head away from it. He turned the student's head away from it. Right? This lowering of the gaze, Ghadd al-Basar, you heard of this lowering of the gaze. Generally, we understand it as lowering of the gaze with, opposite sex and things. But there's also a Ghadd al-Basar of dunya. A lowering of the gaze of the lavishness of dunya, of the world. Because what happens is, if you don't, the same effect that could happen from not lowering your gaze with the opposite sex could have happened with the dunya. Meaning, you get infatuated by the dunya thing, and it starts to overcome you, and you start to pursue it, and become so addicted or obsessed with it. Or, you start to get in a state of lack of gratitude for what you have. Right? Can really damage us. And one of the things in the old traditional architecture of Muslim countries and Muslim cities is that the homes outwardly would all look the same. They would all look the same outwardly. But you may have a minister living next to someone who's not very wealthy. Their house outwardly looks the same, but if you go if you go inside, you see the differences. But because there's nothing wrong with beauty and enjoying beauty. There's nothing wrong with that. You can have a beautiful home, but outwardly, what you show, right? Make it easy on people. So ethics was actually included in the architecture of Muslim towns when Muslims were doing the right thing. Right? They think about these things. Let's paint the same color, not create hasad, envy, evil eye. Right? In the Quran, one of the good examples of this idea of comparing yourselves to someone. Anyone can guess what's one of the best examples of this in the Quran? It's a good example of it, actually. Surah Qasas. You guys have heard of Qarun? Qarun, the wealthy man from the people of Musa, alayhi salam? Okay. So this is a wonderful example, because what happened was with Qarun, at the end of Surah Qasas, I think we just read it in Tarawih not too long ago. But subhanAllah, he was very wealthy, but he was also arrogant. He attributed all his wealth to himself. So anyway, he came out, فَخَرْجَ عَلَىٰ قَوْمِهِ فِي زِينَتِهِ. He came out amongst his people with his lavishness, right? His wealth, flashing it, bling bling, showing off, posting Instagram, all of this, right? And there were people. قَالَ الَّذِينَ يُرِيدُونَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا يَا لَيْتَنَا مِثْلَ مَا أُوتِيَ قَارُونَ إِنَّهُ لَذُو حَظٍّ عَظِيمٍ. The people who, in their hearts, they had this desire for dunya. They said, woe to us. We wish we had what Qarun had. Like, look at him. He's all, like, look at LeBron James. I wish I had that kind of car. Like, he's the best. Look at Steph Curry. I'm sorry, I'm using basketball players because that's what's fresh on my mind. Forgive me. That's my sport. But, right, you start to see these celebrities and you just salivate, like you're just admiring them so much. And wishing you were like them. Not only admiring, wishing you were like that. So you start to get in the gym and work on your jump shot so you can get like that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, when Qarun was swallowed by the earth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swallowed him by the earth. Subhanallah. Right? Swallowed him because of his arrogance. وَأَصْبَحَ الَّذِينَ تَمَنَّوْا مَكَانَهُ بِالْأَمْسِ. And Allah said, the people who desire to be in his position yesterday, they now entered into this state of regret. This state of regret. And regret of not listening to some advice of some certain people. So after they expressed their desire to be like Qarun, there was a response they received from a certain type of people. And this is the type of people we want to be like. وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمِ وَيْلَكُمْ ثَوَابُ اللَّهِ خَيْرٌ لِمَنْ آمَنَ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا. And the people who were endowed with ilm, knowledge, they were the ones who said, woe unto you, the reward of Allah is better than that. Is better than what you're seeing, more pleasurable than what you're seeing, more lasting than what you're seeing, for the one who believes and works righteousness. Now, the lesson here is, what did these people have that enabled them to process that temptation the right way? The temptation of dunya the right way. What is it? The ilm, knowledge. Knowledge, my brothers and sisters, wallahi. MashaAllah, tabarakallah, you guys are here, you've come on a Saturday for this purpose. For this purpose. Keep it up after Ramadan. Make it a tradition, a practice that at least weekly you're doing something to build your knowledge. Because it's the knowledge of Allah, the knowledge of the Prophet's Sunnah, the knowledge of this deen that's going to enable us to see these tempting things of the world and process it properly. And it's going to enable us so it doesn't affect our hearts. So that we become people that use these things in our hands, right? But not in our heart. What's the saying? Right? Dunya in your hand, not in your heart. So you can have the Tesla in your hand, no problem. Right? But it's not overcoming your heart. See some smiles, right? So, but this is going to take your understanding of the world properly. And that only comes through learning about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, learning about this religion. Understanding thawabullahi khair, that the reward of Allah is way better than that. By the way, thawabullahi khair, this reward of Allah that is better than the dunya material that you're seeing is not just akhirah. It's not just the akhirah reward. Can anybody get where I'm getting at right here? Make it kind of challenge you a little bit. Yes, you kind of, yeah. So, the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the committing to Allah, committing to the right way, what it brings to you internally is way better than what that dunya, that money is bringing to that other person who's turned away from Allah. The peace. Right? It's one of the Ibrahim Adham, can't remember the scholar of the saying, but the saying, very famous, that if the kings, the maluk, if they knew the sakina, the peace, the tranquility, the sweetness we have inside of us from our Islam, they would fight us for it with the sword. They would fight us for it with the sword. Why? Because that's what they're looking for. Through all their chasing of the dunya and leaving Allah, always remember that. It's the leaving of Allah and then chasing. You can, if you have Allah, you can have those things, like we said. But the leaving of Allah and making the worldly things priority over Allah, chasing that, thinking that you're going to find what the believers have in their heart, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, by the rahmah of Allah, right, is going down the wrong path. So, thawabullahi khair, what you get from being with Allah is better. Okay? Khairun wa abqa. Right? بَلْ تُؤْثِرُونَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى. In this situation, Allah said, you prefer the life of this world, but the akhirah is better in quality and more lasting. Okay, and that also means the fruits that come from a person who focuses their mind on the akhirah, fi dunya. Tamam. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about, so back to this hadith, right? We're talking about focusing on things that don't concern us. We spoke a little bit about social media and focusing on other people's lives, things that don't. There's something about constantly focusing on the opinions of other people. The opinions of other people. And it's a little bit tricky because someone would maybe outwardly say, wait, this is something that concerns me. Right? But remember what I said? A connection to you of importance. Of importance is very important. That you may have things that are coming your way, that are connected to you, people talking about you, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But how much of it is worth your time? How much of it should drive you? We get in a situation a lot of times where sometimes our decisions on what we're going to wear today are driven by the opinions of people. Or our decisions on, what we're going to do on a Friday night are driven by the opinions of people. Our decisions of what type of home we're going to buy are driven by the opinions of people. Where we become, to a point, slaves of the opinions of people. And God forbid, sometimes we become people that start to compromise our faith because of the opinions of people. So, taking a moment to ask yourself, of these opinions that are about me, how much of it really concerns me? How much of it is really of importance to me, of benefit or harm for me? Right? And you'll notice, when you do that, and you do that evaluation, you'll notice much of it, you can just really leave it to the side. Really, I will never forget, it was this young person, young sister in a halaqah. I think she's like elementary school or middle school. Very innocent. But we had this halaqah, and we were talking about the person who struggles with leaving their group of friends who don't pray to go pray. Right? So it's time for prayer, and they're with a group of friends, and their friends don't pray. And, they struggle to leave because they're worried, they're going to talk about, this guy, he's going to pray, or she's going to pray, say things negative about him or her. So we were in the halaqah, we're like, okay, guys, what would be your advice for this person? And I remember one young sister, very young, innocent, she just stood up and she said, well, my advice would be, he should just not care. That's all she said. He should just not care. Everyone else, like the middle school kids, they gave this hadith and Quran and so many, a long, and this sister just said, he should just not care. And we all agreed that, subhanAllah, it was very simple, very basic, innocent, but wallahi, it's just very true. To have this, I don't care mentality. Like the Prophet ﷺ, right? When he makes this dua after Ta'if. Yeah, Ya Allah, if you are not displeased with me, فَلَا أُبَالِي, then I don't care. I don't care. If you, Allah, are not displeased with me, right, then I don't care. All these opinions, so this idea that وَلَا يَخَافُونَ لَوْمَةَ لَائِمٍ, Allah talks about one of the qualities of the believers that He loves, right? He says that one of their qualities is that they are not fearing the criticism that is not of importance. There's some criticism that's beneficial, but the criticism that comes from the la'im, that this person is just criticizing just to be negative, to demoralize you, to bring down your confidence, to just harm you. Right? It's not constructive, destructive. It's destructive criticism. These people, the people who Allah loves, one of their qualities is that they're not fearful of this. They don't care about this. Right? They just push this aside. And the way that you're going to be able to get to that level is to recognize, ask yourself the question. If you struggle with this, ask yourself, does this criticism harm me, or does it bring me some kind of benefit? In reality. A harm that is meaningful. Okay? And does it affect my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That's really the question. Does it affect my success as a human being? Because your success as a human being is defined by what? By your worship, by your connection, by your Islam. So is this not going to affect the success of me as a human? Right? Maybe the success in their eyes, in that social circle eyes, but my success as a human being is not affected because I'm still with Allah. Then khalas. Right? Keep it moving. Right? Just let the haters talk. Yeah. So that's a good point, right? Like somebody may have bad intentions. Like good advice may come to you from people with bad intentions. That is true. So, yeah. I mean, that's a possibility. I think for the believer in general, right, we will accept benefit from wherever it comes from, as long as it's a benefit. It's a benefit. And that means that, yes, you can always question yourself, but we don't want to be people who are driven by the opinions of people. Right? That's the point here. Whether someone's giving us nasiha, sure, yes, we can take nasiha even if it's from an enemy. Right? But someone who's just bashing us, trying to just really make us look like a fool, affect our confidence. This is the type of thing. We don't want to be people that are like constantly, okay, what are they going to think about me? No. We want to be people that are worried about what Allah thinks. And through worrying about what Allah thinks, yes, you worry about, okay, do I have qualities that would make me displeasing with Allah? And sometimes that is brought to light through means that you would not expect. Allah yabarik fiki. Now, so all of this, what I'm mentioning here, is things that can come from this over-focus on those things that do not concern us. And I think I mentioned it quickly in the beginning about the controlling of the tongue. I don't know if I did mention that. But very important that we think before we talk. I mean, really, pause. Some of us, we're good talkers, right? Some of us, we can just, we can go, right? I'm going to say that's a skill that you can articulate and you can talk a lot, mashallah, may Allah bless it and put barakah in it. But it's also a very, it can be very dangerous for you as well. It's a test. If you are a talker, it's a test. Okay? And therefore, you pass the test by really deliberating and thinking before you speak, as you speak, especially in the heat of the moment. Right? You're in this heat of the conversation. And, actually, in that study I mentioned, they also said another thing that came out of that study about people's kind of finding pleasure in gossip. They said that one of the things that gossip also does, why people engage in it so much, is that it helps, it creates like a companionship. It creates an acceptance amongst people. Because to gossip about one another, like if you're going to gossip to him about someone else, there has to be a level of like intimacy, a level of closeness between you two. Right? For you to have that kind of conversation. And a lot of times you'll have social circles, right? Where you become more included in that circle. And you become more accepted in that circle because you go with the flow of the gossip. You go with the flow of the conversation. Right? So to be in that moment where you're with some people and the conversation is starting to go to focusing on the affair or the business of someone else. But you're in the middle. You don't want to be like that odd one that like breaks the conversation, right? It becomes very difficult. And that's the moment, the test. That's the moment of test. That's when you show Allah, Ya Allah, I'm going to pass this test, right? You remain silent. You move away from the conversation. Maybe you go use your phone to be an excuse, like act like you got to do something on your phone, go somewhere else. Or if you have the ability in that circle to advise, these are people close enough to you. And you can advise and inform them of this bad practice, right? Do that. But sometimes you're not always in a position to preach, and then sometimes brings more harm than good. Therefore, remove yourself. Right? Remove yourself. But the point here is that we're mindful of this, and we're mindful that we're going to be tested in these ways. Right? So just being mindful of that, we'll be kind of on our toes to pass this test, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And, to bring it all down back as 250, there's so much we can talk about here. Ibn al-Arabi, rahimahullah, he said something about this. He said that a man or woman, just saying a person, does not even is not even taking care of all the necessary matters, right? In terms of all the obligations they need to take care of, all of the, tazkiyah they need to, all of the matters of importance for each individual. There's no one that's taking care of all of it. Every single one of us has deficiencies and flaws and places where we need to improve, right or wrong. So he said, a man does not even take care of all the necessary matters. Why would he busy himself with matters that are not of concern to him or her? So you take away, first of all, you still have work to do on yourself. But then now the time, the energy, the effort, the focus that you need to accomplish those improvement points is being taken and stolen by you focusing on other people. It's really a loss. It's a big loss for us to be people who are engaged in these kind of matters. And the thing that we as Muslims, if you tell me you don't have any type of anything, you're good to go, right? That's a problem. Don't ever say that you're good to go. But one of the things that can always busy us, don't tell me you don't have anything one of the things you can always be busy with is muhasabah of yourself. Right? You're not engaged, you don't have a lot of things going on. Sit, think about your situation. What are those things I need to improve on? Work on the game plan to improve on those things. There's so much matters of importance. I mean, the dunya takes up a lot of our mind already. Money, family, kids, school, work, all of these things. But when you have time, and you have to make time for this, think about yourself. It's not when there's school and all those dunya things are down or shut down, it's a weekend, now you have time to just engage in nonsense. No, now you have some time to think about yourself. Okay? So inshallah, may Allah help us to be people that focus on that which is of importance to ourselves. I do want to just leave and really emphasize the fact that do not become people of a selfish nature. A selfish nature. Because this hadith sometimes can lead to that. There's a culture. Actually, I was reading this article, supposed to be like some kind of, from a credible source, that said one of the ways that you reduce stress in your life is that you don't make other people's problems your problems. Now, for a Muslim, that doesn't work. That's not the way of the Muslim. أَحَبُّ النَّاسِ إِلَى اللَّهِ أَنْفَعُهُمْ لِلنَّاسِ. Prophet said the most beloved people to Allah are the people most beneficial to other people. We are people that are concerned about the well-being of others. I mean, as a child, you should have concern of your parents' problems. As a parent, you should have concern of your child's problems or your relative. You should have concern of one another and want the best for one another. And that sometimes means going out and sacrificing for your brother or your sister. Right? So we do not become people of a selfish nature. Yes, we worry about things that are concerning to us, but amongst the matters, the time where it is beneficial to worry about other people's concerns is when you are going to be one that brings benefit to them. Or when you are commanding good, prohibiting evil. Those are times when it is virtuous to focus on something that may not be directly connected to you, but it's directly connected to you through the hasanat and the reward you get from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it. So may Allah help us to practice this hadith, and may Allah make it beneficial for us. Inshallah, we have 5 minutes for questions or comments or experiences. I always like to mention experiences. People sometimes have amazing experiences that become benefit for all of us. Yes, sis. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing to note about it, and it's not always applicable, but it's always important to not assume that that circle is the only place of belonging. I think sometimes we get into this, we view like a particular circle, maybe we have some history with them, and then we view that as like the only place that I'll ever find belonging in the entire world, or the entire school, the entire community, right? It's always important to know that there's other circles out there. And sometimes it takes a little bit of effort to find other circles, but there are other circles, and circles that could be more beneficial for you. That's point number one. Point number two, sometimes there's an element of love involved. Like they have a long history of friendship, and they love each other, and there's this connection. Not necessarily do we call people to break that love. We call people to rectify that love. And rectifying that love means that if you love someone, you want the best for that person in this life and the next life. You want comprehensively the best for that person because of your love for that person, right? And therefore, you strive as much as you can, what's in your capacity. Because if there's a relationship of love, then you do have a channel of nasiha. Or you have a channel of nasiha. And therefore, you strive as best as you can to give advice in a way of wisdom, with hikmah, a gentle, loving way. And I always say, preface the advice with how you feel about the person. Right? Preface it with your strong love and wanting the best for this person. And you give advice as much as you can so that you can rectify that circle. If that's something that's not possible, or it's just making the situation worse, then there is a moment where we have to kind of break free and find other circles. We could keep a light connection, association in certain things with those people, but there's a moment where you got to think about yourself. Because when you stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there are people going to stand in front of Allah, and they're going to view certain friendships they had in this world as enemies. Like they're going to hate that person that they were best friends with in this dunya, because that person was pulling them away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So think about when you go to Allah as well. So this would be, it's a tough, sometimes it requires more of an individual kind of counseling, but that would be my general advice. Yeah, mashallah. So, venting, only permissible. The venting that we understand of just like venting just to like vent, we don't do that. Right? We vent for purpose. We vent with purpose, always, as Muslims. You vent because you want to change, or the person you're venting to can bring a change, or bring a fix, or something of this. Or perhaps you're venting because you're doing a form of protection. Right? One of the cases where backbiting is permissible is that, for example, this brother, he wants to get married to someone whom you know is no good. So at that point, you would end up backbiting, but you're protecting. Right? Or in the court, in the case of a qadi, the judge, you're in the court case, you have to say things about people. But in general, venting should have purpose. And I think if you kind of operate with that, okay, when you start, even if you catch yourself venting, you say, okay, wait, can this person really do anything for this situation? Right? Sometimes the person can actually help you counsel yourself, like how can counsel you to how to deal with it internally, emotionally, or give you the advice of the steps that you should take. That's a venting with purpose as well. But just venting just to vent so the other person can have the same opinion, negative opinion that you have, this is not of Islam. Alhamdulillah. Yes. Yes. Permissible. So she said about, backbiting to help someone else. Helping, bringing benefit, saving someone, protecting someone, these are all the permissible cases. Right? But don't let shaitan get you too. Shaitan will use this, right? He's going to use this lecture on Saturday, say, Imam Kebba said these things. Right? Be careful. You have to really be honest with yourself as much as you can. Sometimes consulting, I would say. Sometimes we don't recognize that we're fooling ourselves. So consulting with people you trust, people of knowledge, to kind of help you navigate these kind of difficult situations is helpful as well. so that you make decisions that are truly beneficial, not delusional, right? Not delusional decisions. Yes, sister. Response. Yeah. Yeah. So I would first ask the person, like, is there anything I can do to help the situation? Can I help you? Can I help the person? Is there anything I can do in my capacity? And if they say, yeah, well, your advice for me would be helpful, or just even your words of comfort, give me some ways to manage it emotionally, mentally. If they say that, then there's a benefit there that you can provide. But if they say, like, no, I just want to tell you this, or, I just want you to know how evil this person is. That's it. There's no benefit. There's nothing. Then at that point, so maybe the question could kind of lead to your expression that, hey, this is probably not a beneficial conversation if there's no way that this conversation can bring a greater benefit, right? So maybe that. But yeah, I'm sure some sisters may have, and some brothers may have some other better advice. We're all figuring this out. Wallahi. Whether you're in this chair or whatever, we're all figuring this out. May Allah help us. Tamam. Good? Allah yabarik fikum. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward all of you for coming. May Allah make it beneficial. May Allah accept our fasting, our prayers, our qiyam, our dua. Don't forget, take advantage of these last 10 nights. Amazing nights, opportunity to really, really accomplish greatness in our lives, and an opportunity to really bring, inshallah, more beauty to the world. And you guys know what I mean. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us in accomplishing this. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.